Welcome to Ultimate DIY, where you learn to be your own handyman. And today we're going to compare the 12-volt Dewalt to the 20-volt Dewalt. Well, it's a beautiful day here in Texas. It's not too cold. It's just after Christmas. We've been locked inside because we've had rain for several days. So I wanted to get outside, work a little bit, and I decided to do this tool review out in the nice clean air. Now you are going to hear some planes go by. I think there's a guy chainsawing down the street. We have a lot of car traffic going by. So you're going to hear some of that noise, but it's a beautiful day. And I wanted to do this outside. Now you're also going to notice that I'm standing in front of this siding project that I'm working on right now. If you'd like to see how I do that, watch for that video. It'll be coming out pretty quickly. But let's go ahead and get into the Dewalt system. So before I really get deep into the Dewalt comparison, I'd like to address the battery controversy that's going on over Dewalt being really an 18-volt system, just like Milwaukee, and not a 20-volt system. So let me explain how that works to you. There are two different ways you can describe the battery system on a battery-operated tool. You can describe that battery in its max state, or you can describe it in its nominal state. And what that means is when I'm looking at this tool right now, the max battery power inside this unit is 20 volts. But nominal means the second I pull the trigger, just like that, it becomes an 18-volt system. So it really just kind of comes down to marketing. So Dewalt, along with Craftsman, which is owned by Black & Decker, they're all owned by the same company, and there's a few others involved there as well. They chose to use the max voltage system. So when you buy the tool and you look at the box is going to tell you 20-volt brushless. If you go look at a Milwaukee tool or a Ryobi or a couple of the others, they're all connected in that realm, they're going to be called an 18-volt system. But technically both units are exactly the same. So, and just so that you know that I'm telling you the truth, if you grab your box, either get one off the shelf and look next time you're in Home Depot, or when you buy your unit, if you'll look at the front cover, look down in the bottom right corner, it's going to tell you, Dewalt tells you, they're not trying to be misleading, they're telling you the truth, that this unit, when it's in its resting state, is going to be a 20-volt system, but when it's nominal, when it has a load behind it and working, it becomes an 18-volt system. So when you take a look at your 12-volt system, they tell you the same thing. If you look down in the bottom corner, they'll tell you that when it's resting, it's 12 volts. When it's actually got the trigger pulled and there's a load, it becomes a 10.8. So, and one other thing, I've got this box out on purpose because I want you to look at, see this sticker that's on the side that has the battery packs? They do that for carriers to know that there are lithium batteries inside of a unit, and to watch for it, I guess, for fires and things like that, maybe how they treat it so they don't puncture it and cause a fire. But the big reason I want you to see this is the way this box comes from Amazon. So if you're going to have this delivered in front of your house and you're not going to be home, you may want to have them rebox the unit so that it doesn't show that it's a Dewalt tool inside. Tools are one of the fastest things to get stolen in front of your home. If somebody's driving by and they see that toolbox like this sitting in front of your door and they don't see cars out there, they may just jump out of the car and go grab it and go, and you didn't get your unit. So, you know, pro tip, if you're going to order tools, make sure that you tell them to put it in a different box unless you're going to be home to get it, or you're having it delivered to your business or something like that. So let's go ahead and get into the units a little. Now I've got the boxes out so I can look at the back if I kind of stumble and forget any of the specifics, but I do know a lot of those by heart just from reading it. These are both your 20-volt system and your 12 now, when you're ordering those, are going to be brushless systems. And most everyone's going brushless. Brushless just means that there are no little brushes that are going to wear out inside of this that you're going to have to replace over time. So that's a really great thing. It's also a little more efficient. There are quite a few things about brushless, and we could go into that in a different video, but these are brushless systems. You've got your 20 volt system and you've got your 12. Now we're going to go into the impacts first, and then I'm going to go into the drills. So basically, the biggest selling point, if you're going to go buy these units and you want a 12 volt system versus the 20, and you're looking at them, if you're a homeowner and you're not going to use them a lot, 12 volts is probably going to be fine for you. The advantage you're going to have is it's lightweight. So if you're doing something overhead and you're putting a lot of screws or bolts in, this could make a difference. When I say lightweight, you're looking at about, I think this is 1 3/4. This is going to be about 2 1/4. I think they call it 2.2. So you have maybe a half a pound difference. Well, that half a pound can make a big difference in 8 hours of driving things overhead. So that could be a big plus. The bit sizes on these are both going to be 1/4. Now they claim on this one on the box that you can use a 1-inch bit. But by looking at my 2 bit holders here, they are identical. So I can put this bit in, it goes to the exact same spot and stops. There is no difference in length or anything. So I believe both of these are going to use a 1-inch bit. So that's really not a huge benefit because you're going to do the same here. So now we're looking for size. We know weight. We're looking for size as far as compactness. Can I get this in places I can't get that one? Well, they're claiming that it's quite a bit of difference, but we'll look at it. It does not really seem to be a lot. Now, if you're looking at height, I've got about a 1/2 inch. And I can measure that just to make sure. We're at about 8.5, and we're at about 9. So if you're getting in between something, this will give you about a 1/2 inch more clearance. Could be a factor, maybe, maybe not. But if you've got something you're working on that's really tight quarters, that could be a big benefit. So the other thing is going to be the length this way. Now these 2 units to me look identical this direction, so I don't see that being a benefit at all. So the only real difference is going to be the height. So if I'm turning it this way, I might get a 1/2 inch, but this way, no difference at all. Chuck size, or bit size, the 1/4 inch, the exact same. So your big benefit, weight, and about a 1/2 inch if you're turning it sideways trying to mount something, if you're in a tight quarter. So that is your big differences between the units. Now, when I say that though, there is one other thing that I do like. You have a clutch or a speed gear button at the top. So you start pulling this, you'll start with the first one, which has a little screw on it, like a Phillips head screw. Now what that's supposed to do is it allows you to use an impact drill, almost like a screwdriver or a screw gun, and not strip out those heads. Now that I do think is a pretty interesting thing. And you have multiple speeds as you go through that gear. You push it again, you go to low, so your torque and your rounds per minute jump up quite a bit. Now I believe they say on the rounds per minute on this one, it's going to be up to 950 on the one with the screw. You're going to jump up to 1950 on the middle, and then you're going to go to 2850 at the highest RPM, which is really good if you're putting in a self-tapping screw or something into a metal building or metal. Really beneficial. So that could be a plus. Now, if I'm putting in a bunch of screws though in a metal building, do I want to use this unit, or would I rather use something with a little bit more torque, the bigger one? Good question. May have to try that on some metal and find out. But when you come to this unit though, there is no speeds. It has basically the one major speed, but does ramp up. And it ramps up quite a bit. And I believe your highest RPM on this one looks like it's about 28. So 28 versus 2850. So the RPMs are going to be almost identical. Matter of fact, the RPMs on this one are slightly higher. And you can hear the difference. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So your torque, the torque on this unit is going to be about 1450. The torque on this unit, I believe, is going to be around 1700. So you've got a few hundred pounds more torque, which can really help if you're breaking loose big bolts and nuts, things like that. So that's your main differences. Also, by the way, now you know you can get all kinds of battery packs for the 20-volt system. You can upgrade these batteries as well. I know I'll leave a link for, if you're going to get this unit, I'll leave a link for a pack where you can get 2 of the batteries, and you're going to get, these are 2 amp hours. You can go to 5 amp hours, so they're going to be a little wider. Now that's also going to take away maybe from some of your advantage of this unit, but of course it would be the same thing here too. So as long as you keep the little pack, if you need to get into a tight spot, you can switch that out, get into the tight spot. If you're doing a whole bunch of drilling, you can go to that 5 amp hour battery and last a lot longer. When you order these units, by the way, they are both going to come with bags, and they're going to come with a charger. They're each going to have 2 batteries each. Those are the links I'll leave you in the description so that you can get these units if you want to get them. Now, that's impact. Let's take a look at drills. Now, the drills to me are even a little more interesting. Now, I can definitely feel more weight in this unit. So, but if you look at height, they're almost identical again. So, let's see, it doesn't even really look like a 1/2 inch, but you're about 8 3/4. You're about 8 1/2, so you're about a 1/4 inch difference in height. So if you look at the 12-volt system and you're going to look at the weight is 1.91, so a little under 2 pounds. If I'm going to look at the weight on my big unit here, the 20-volt system, my weight is 2.4. So you've got about roughly a 1/2 pound or so of difference, maybe a little bit less, and you can definitely feel that. So that I get. If I'm doing a lot of drilling, that's gonna make a difference. Both of them are going to have 2 transmission speeds. You have 1 and 2 on the top. You're also going to have a drill mode, and then you have 15 other clutch speeds underneath, all the way to 15, all the way to 15. So far they're pretty comparable. Your RPMs though, that's going to be a little different. You're going to have rounds per minute on this one. You're going to have 1,500 rounds per minute on this one. You're going to have 2,000. That's going to come in handy when you're trying to drill into things like steel and metal that just do not want to drill. So if I'm trying to drill a hole, a 1/2 inch hole, which that's going to be another good point here in a second, but if I'm trying to drill a 1/2 inch hole into metal using this, I would rather have my 2,000 RPMs versus this at 15. If I'm trying to do a self-tapping screw, this is going to be a little bit better. Now, if I'm using self-tapping screws though, I'm probably going to be using my impacts. So that is a very valid point. 1,500 versus 2,000. The weight though is 1/2 pound difference versus this one. Clutches are the same, and the transmission speeds are the same. And they both ramped up the same way. Now these have lights down at the bottom of the units, both pretty much the same. You'll get clips on all the units just like this one. I just don't have them mounted on the 20-volt systems here. So what is the big difference then that I don't like? I'll tell you what it is. If I'm going to take a bit, I can only put a 3/8 inch bit in this little 12-volt system. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. It'll take those bits great, and I can use larger bits as long as that shaft is 3/8, okay, or smaller. But when I want to take something like this bit that has a 1/2 inch shank, I'm going to have to use the bigger drill. It will work perfect here, which means it's a stronger drill bit, or stronger bit, period. When I go to try to put that same bit in this 12, obviously it's not going to fit. So you're going to be limited by using this unit versus this on what bits you can use and how strong those bits are going to be. So overall, the units are fairly comparable. You know, they're just a little smaller, not quite as strong. Let's go ahead and do a little testing real quick, and let's just see how they work on breaking some bolts loose and driving a few different types of screws. Okay, so a couple of tests we're going to do. One of the things I'm going to do first is I've torqued these nuts down to about the same level, and we're going to see how easily each one of these units break them down, and then we'll probably drive a couple of them as well, just see how well they tighten up and if they feel as strong or if they work as quickly. So that's going to be one test. By the way, I'm using my bit holder to hold the different bits that I'm going to be using, like this one for the construction screws. I do have a video on this if you'd like to see it. These are great. I'll also put a link to these in the description as well. So I use those quite a bit to hold my bits. But let's go ahead and see what's next. We're also going to use, this is going to be our construction screw. We're going to drive a couple of these through this wood and just see how well it takes. That should make it all the way. If it goes all the way to the end, it'll make it through 3 2x material pieces of lumber. The other thing I want to do is we want to take this 12-volt system and use that little screw clutch at the top that I was describing to you earlier, and we want to see how well that drives these regular Phillips screws without stripping the head, because I normally don't use Phillips screws unless I'm working on something like electrical or something like that, and I generally will not use this tool because I'm afraid of stripping those screws out, and once you strip them out, sometimes you can't get them out and it becomes a huge nightmare. So that'll be an interesting test as well. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's drive. Let's see how quickly. We will start with the 20-volt system. And like I said, these are both torqued to the same amount. So we're going to go ahead and see how easily this breaks loose. That was pretty simple and quick. So let's try it now with the 12-volt system. See if it works just as well. It got it loose, but it did struggle. I noticed at the very beginning it didn't just whip it off of there like that. But will it work? Sure. Now, will you burn the unit up if you're doing a whole bunch of this every day? I don't know. That's only time will tell. Let's go ahead and retighten it and see how tight it'll take it before it actually stops. Yeah, that's pretty good right there. And let's try it on the 20 volt. Quite a bit tighter. So definitely much stronger unit. That extra 500 pounds of torque makes a big difference. Now, once it got loose, though, this one did spin it a little bit faster, I think. If I remember right, that had just a little bit more rounds per minute. So we have those. I'm going to set that there. So now let's go ahead and try our construction screws. So we're going to put the correct bit in for that. And let's try driving a construction screw. Now this is my 20-volt system. That's pretty much it without stopping and starting. Let's see if the 12-volt system will drive it just as far or if it's going to stop sooner. Okay, this one was our 20. Now it's time for 12. See where it stops. Well, now that's really interesting because that 20-volt system just outworked the one. So I'm going to try a different battery in case this battery's a little weak. Now these are the batteries that come with the units. Now you can get bigger amp hour batteries which tend to make them a little stronger. But let's see. Let's try it again. Well, that one drove it in. Now, one thing to keep in mind, guys, is there's a knot here, and I tend to be next to that knot. So I'm going to be fair. I'm going to take and do one more, and I'm going to drive the next one exactly where the knot is as well, right next to it. So we'll see now if the 12 works better. Honestly, guys, I do think it's weird, and I think it has a lot to do with the RPMs on this because the RPMs are just slightly higher. But it drove, to be honest with you, this little unit drove that screw much better, which is kind of surprising to me. So for whatever reason, this one tends to be just a little stronger. And both of these units, by the way, are like brand new. So now I did have that on high, so we could have tried to do it on low, but we did have it on high. So maybe the transmission type speeds in this thing make it drive just a little better. So let's go ahead now and let's switch, because I want to see how well this works with the very first speed on a Phillips head. So we're going to set it right there. That is set to the screw so that it's supposed to drive it in without destroying the screw. Now that's only going to go up to 950 rounds per minute. So let's see how that actually works and if it'll drive it. Yeah, but see, by doing that, not in wood, now it may work in small stuff, but it does not seem to work very well there because it does not want to turn it. There's no power. Let's move it up to low. Okay, low gets in there, but starting to struggle. Let's go ahead and go to high. And high has no problem at all. So what I am thinking is that the little low torque one will work great maybe on small screws, trying to drive it into something like a light fixture or something like that. And maybe that's where it'll shine. But as far as driving into wood, that's a no-go. It does not work very well. All right, so let's try driving the screw into the wood with the bigger 20-volt Dewalt and see how it drives. Now, so to be honest with you, the 20-volt Dewalts in this definitely chews up the end a little more and struggles. You can get sideways and have a hard time pulling it in. And it did seem to even struggle a little harder getting it into the wood versus the high clutch speed in the 12-volt system. So the things that I see here right now, weight is great. Driving bolts and stuff are really good on this. You're going to have to definitely go with a higher amp hour battery to make sure that it works better in the long run. Now, this 20-volt system may work better with a higher amp volt or higher amp battery. So it may do much better in that scenario. But if I'm looking at these two units, the 12-volt system works great in driving and screws, loosening up bolts and nuts. But if you're going to use it for the non-strip screw function at the top, it's probably going to have to be little small screws. It's not really great for driving a big Phillips head screw into the unit without it bogging down. Now, that being said, you can drive the big Phillips screw with this unit in the higher speed, and it seems to do a better job than the 20-volt system. Now, the 20-volt system really shines when it's breaking loose the nuts and bolts and driving them down nice and tight. You have a little more torque to be able to get those things done. But overall, this unit fared pretty well. But if I'm going to be using this to put a bunch of bolts in a, say a steel building that I'm building, I'm going to go with this unit. Matter of fact, I probably will upgrade it to a bigger impact unit if I'm doing a lot of that every day. So, do you really need this unit or this unit? Honestly, if I'm going to spend the money, I'll spend a little more and I'll get the bigger unit. But this is really great for around the house small stuff. If I'm a handyman and I'm working inside of a house and I've got a lot of little projects going on, this is great because it's lightweight, and I do like the functions as far as the clutch, because I think the clutch makes a big difference. So I guess it's up to you which unit you buy. You might be able to buy both, but I'm still, if I'm working every day out in the field and I'm a handyman, I'm probably still going to be picking this one up. So let's take a look at the drills. What we're going to do first with the drill, now obviously on this little one I cannot put this same bit because it's just not going to fit. So we're going to go ahead and try this with a paddle bit, and we're going to drill into the wood here, and we're going to see how well it drills. and if it struggles and when it struggles. So let's give it a try and see what it does. Now, be sure you put it on the drill mode. That way, that if you have it on a clutch mode, it's going to get to a certain point and it's just going to stop. So that's not really a fair representation of what the unit can do. So we're going to go ahead now and try to drill. Okay, struggles. All right, so we're going to try the 20-volt system next, and we're going to go directly behind it. So we're using the same kind of wood. If I go to the left, there's a knot, so I want to be fair. So we're going to start it right behind it. Much deeper. All right, so this one was just one where I started and stopped because the battery was a little bit low on the 20. This was the actual 20. So you compare this with your drill with the 20-volt system, how far down it goes compared to a drill with the 12-volt system, which barely touched the surface. So overall, guys, I think they're both really great systems, just depending on what you're trying to do. If you're doing more delicate work inside, working with light fixtures, things that maybe you have a chance of stripping stuff out, you might want to use the smaller 12-volt system. If it's a compact area, like a really tight spot you're trying to get into, if you're under the house working on things and you're trying to get under there and you need that extra ½ inch, this is the way to go. Now, to be honest, it had a lot more power than I expected it to really have. If I'm going to be sitting here and putting big bolts, though, in a steel building, then I'm going to go with something like this. Now, you do have the bigger impacts, and I'll leave a couple links for those as well. But both units are great. You can add them both to your arsenal and have two systems. So it depends on the work that you're doing, which one you're going to grab. Or if you have to pick just one, honestly, guys, I would probably pick the larger because it's not much difference in price, and you're really not going to save yourself a whole lot of difference in size. You'll save maybe about a ½ inch if you're trying to get in between studs, but that's really about it, and the weight is slightly different. So if the weight is a big factor to you, go with the 12. If power is a big factor and you really want the most power that you can possibly get, go with the 20-volt system. So that being said, I do appreciate it and hope to see you on the next one.